that we waste a lot of stuff around the house. There's a lot of leftover vegetables, and with 2 kids, they don't always eat everything. So a lot of stuff gets thrown in the trash, which winds up in a landfill, which doesn't really benefit me and my family, or probably the environment all that much. So I really wanted to, 1, get something that would help out with the garden, and 2, try to teach the kids that recycling is something easy to do and something you can do every day. So I thought composting would be a great start, since we have a garden that we are building outside and we could really use some nutrient-rich soil. So I went out and I bought this Miracle-Gro 28-gallon 2x composter, and it was fairly cheap, just over $100, and I wanted to see how well we could do with making our own, essentially, soil and compost to mix into the garden, and to, save up on the amount of waste that was going into the garbage. Before we get into actually what goes into the composter, let's take a look at how it goes together. Now, this manual is pretty thick, but it is in a bunch of languages, and it is pretty nicely detailed on how to assemble it. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what the assembly looks like. Now that we have the whole unit assembled and we have it located outside, it's time to put stuff into our composter so we can begin composting and making that nutrient-rich soil that I want for the garden. However, I have no idea what actually goes into a composter, other than knowing that most organic materials are compostable. Probably the only things you want to avoid are things with seeds, because you don't want things like weeds and other stuff growing out of your composter or contaminating the soil once you lay the compost down. Fortunately, the guidebook that has the instructions on how to put it together also comes with instructions on what to put in it. Basically, there's 3 types of material that you can put into a composter. The first type is nitrogen. The second type is carbon rich, and the third is neutral, which basically is a filler and doesn't have an effect on the nitrogen carbon balance inside the composter. Now, the nitrogen carbon balance is really important because that's what's going to affect how it composts and how quickly it composts. That is if you really are into this and want it to go fast. If you're just trying to not waste as much stuff in the house and get more materials to recycle, then you can pretty much just throw stuff in the composter and it will do its thing, check it over time, and when it looks like soil, spread it on the garden. It won't hurt anything to do it that way either. Now, to give you an idea of what should go into it and for us to get started, I'll just read you off the list right from the manual of what these different things are. So, for instance, lawn and garden weeds, those are nitrogen rich, as are flowers, cuttings, seaweed, kelp, fruit and vegetable scraps. If you have things like rabbits, rabbit manure, horse manure, those work really well. Tea leaves, green grass clippings, even garden plants, like especially if they die off and you clip them down, those make great use of nitrogen-rich material for the composting heap. I know one of the things I'm looking forward to is we have a lot of bulbs, and when they die back, they leave these green fronds, but there's no flowers. So when I cut them back, they usually wind up in a plastic bag off to the landfill. Now they're going to be winding up in our compost heap. The second part are the carbon materials. Now the carbon materials are going to be things like leaves, straw, hay, pine needles, wood ash, cardboard. Cardboard from Amazon. We get a lot of Amazon boxes here. Just chop it up first and grind it down if you use it. corn cobs, stalks, even dryer lint, which it's cotton usually, wood chips, sawdust, and we also produce a lot of sawdust around here, so that will be going in as well. And then finally, there's the neutral stuff, and neutral things are things like eggshells, and you know, eggshells for kids, we're producing a lot of those too, so being able to kind of crush those down and throw those into the bin, that will also you know, save a lot of waste around the house and contribute to our composter. Now, there's also a lot of things that we don't think about that are very rich in nitrogen, and these are things like table scraps. And table scraps, even meats can be put in there, though I wouldn't recommend composting meat if you're doing it too close to the house, because that very well may attract some unwanted friends to your place of dwelling. But if you have it located far away, like you have a big piece of property and you put it way back on the other end of the property away from the house, those might be great things to compost as well. With that said, I am going to go ahead and I am going to start filling these bins. And since it's the spring, and well, since it's the spring when I started this project, it's not the spring right now. I had tons of thatch from the grass coming up, so as I was raking that out, that gave me lots and lots of material to begin filling the bins, and over time I am going to keep adding materials from our household waste into it, and in fact I will go get an example of that right now. Now I know everyone's really psyched to see our household waste, so here we go. First off, I drink a lot of coffee in the morning. Coffee grinds are really good for composting. Definitely throw all those in. Here are our neutral eggshells. Again, really good for filling out the biomass and also for adding enough space for the microorganisms to bind to, for airflow to go through. So those are great. Crush them up and toss it in. Had burgers a few nights ago. That tomato looks a little nasty. Don't throw it in the garbage. Throw it in the composter. Same thing. We have a cucumber. We have some leftover vegetables. Nothing's wrong with them, but they don't look too good and they're not too appetizing, so you don't want to put them on your food. Throw them in a composter. We try to buy a lot of fresh produce, but we don't always get to eat it in time before it wilts and goes bad, and something like this is a pretty big item to toss in the trash, and it also isn't free. So we might as well try to use it at least in some way. So I'll chop this up and I'll toss this in as well. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you some of these things and how easy it is to toss into the composter, and then we will kind of wrap up this video and talk a little bit about what it looks like now, where we're probably about 4 months into the composting experiment. So it really is that easy. You just take your scraps, you take your biomaterials, you toss them into the bins, and 27 gallons times 2 is a lot of material once it starts breaking down. So you can put a lot of waste and really recover it and do something good with it. Now, if you really want to speed up the process, composting is a science. There is microbes involved, bugs, bacteria, all these kinds of things that work together to break down this biomass into usable soil. Now, if you're really into it, there's mixtures, there's formulas, there's all kinds of things to make this go well, but if you really just toss stuff in there, let it sit over time, eventually you're gonna get something really good and you're contributing to the environment and maybe teaching your kids a little something while you're doing it. This whole video started out as a review of the Miracle-Gro composter, and at first I thought maybe with the plastic it was gonna be a little cheap and problematic, but the plastic clips held. I've had it for 4 months. It's been out in now big storms, hurricanes that have hit the East Coast. So it's been good, and it's still in good shape, and I can't see it not lasting for a very long time. So I'm perfectly happy with it. The size is really good. I've put everything we've had waste-wise over the summer into it, and we keep composting, and I still have plenty of space to spare. I really am looking forward though to actually using some of this stuff, but it's going to be a while more before it's completely ready to lay down into the beds. But hopefully after this winter, next spring comes, we start the garden up again, I will put it to good use. So there's lots of stuff that you can put into the composter. I feel like we're gonna save a lot of space in our trash cans, and I'm really looking forward to doing this. Now, by no means am I ever going to be an expert on composting, but there's tons of places you can get better information on this and how to do it better, and I suggest you do a search on Google, or even start off with the Miracle-Gro manual, because it gives you a pretty good idea of how to start, including some ratios of green materials versus brown materials, and those are going to be the nitrogen versus the carbon rich materials. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, more reviews, more how-tos, more DIY type of stuff, please subscribe to our channel and like the video. Like the video even if you just want to see how our compost looks in a couple more months from now. If you're curious, leave a message. We always check our comments and reply back. So until next time, have fun with your gardening projects. I highly recommend you get into composting, and let me know if you do and how it works out for you.